Kinetic weapons have been getting a lot of love lately, with TechSec being one of the best gear sets available, and Outbreak not only being a featured exotic, but a dominant pick for Desert Perpetual. There's so many great choices for Kinetic synergy with the recent sandbox changes as well, especially if you're on Warlock. A few of them I've highlighted in my videos, with the standouts so far being Necrotic Grips Poison counting as kinetic damage to cause chain TechSec blasts, and Winter's Guile being a monster for glaive melees, netting you up to 6000 DPS with Winterbite. I wanted to take a closer look at Chromatic Fire to see how it would stack up against two fantastic kinetic builds, and in trying to mix things up from Outbreak, I figured I'd turn to an old favorite of mine, Revision Zero. Revision Zero is one of the more underrated exotics in my opinion, since it has a lot of utility and it can put out a surprising amount of damage, but unfortunately it doesn't have the highest ease of use. At its most optimal, Revision Zero can outperform Outbreak, but Outbreak is extremely forgiving with rewind rounds and nanites, so even if you're just landing body shots, you'll still be doing good damage, where Revision requires consistent precision hits to be at its best. With Revision Zero, if you're unfamiliar, you can choose between two different firing modes, one a 2-shot heavy burst like Aisha's Care or Nullify, and the other a 4-shot aggressive burst like Blast Furnace or Disparity. Precision hits give you targeting data, which can fill up to 4 shots of a sniper round that you can store and activate at any time by holding reload. Where Revision gets really interesting though is in its catalyst, since you can use 4th times the charm, which also applies to the sniper shots, allowing you to fire up to 6 for a huge amount of damage. You can also put Vorpal on Revision, which paired with being intrinsically anti-barrier, you can instantly pop barrier shields and 100 to 0 them with a few well-placed sniper shots. So we'll get into some numbers quickly before I talk about the general game plan of the build, since I think it's a really interesting comparison point for Outbreak. I tested everything with the same gear and at 180 weapon stat, which is just what I had for my build. At base, with no sniper shots against the test dummies in the range, the 4-burst mode deals 6018 damage total per mag for a DPS of 450, and the 2-round burst deals 5800 per mag, but much faster, netting a DPS of 655. Including the sniper shots, the 2-round burst did 16,252 damage total for a DPS of 1,096, and the 4-round did 13,284 total, but getting to the sniper shots faster, it had a DPS of 1,116. The numbers are pretty similar here, and this is really to say you should just go with whichever mode suits your preference, and there won't be too much of a trade-off in damage. The big difference, however, is that it takes a full magazine of precision hits for the 2-burst to fill your targeting data, whereas it only takes half of the magazine on the 4-burst. I'd say about 95% of the time I'm holding onto my sniper shots for things like barrier champs or mini-bosses, so this doesn't make too much an impact for me, since I'd rather get higher damage during the normal bursts, but if you're looking for faster targeting data for more sniper shots, you might prefer the 4-burst. Comparing Revision to Outbreak, things are surprisingly close. Against Carl, including the full 6 sniper shots, Revision Zero did 11,420 damage total with a DPS of 769. The highest I got for a single mag of Outbreak was 10,120 damage total with a DPS of 782. Now, the buff text for Vorpal doesn't seem to show up against bosses in the shooting range, though it does for champions, as you can see here. I did take Vorpal off to double check if the buff was applying just without the text, which it was, so that increase is included in the previous totals. On the test dummies, the highest I got for the full works of Revision was 16,199 total for 1,091 DPS, and Outbreak's highest was 14,601 total for 1,203 DPS. These numbers are the optimal amounts for both guns, so taken purely as a comparison point, Revision and Outbreak come in a lot closer than I was expecting them to, especially considering Outbreak has that new gear bonus for 10% extra damage. It's important to note that Outbreak will absolutely pull ahead when used alongside teammates applying their own nanites though, but from a solo perspective, Revision Zero is a fantastic alternative that offers better range, higher accuracy, and incredible anti-barrier utility. With the accuracy and range of the heavy burst, as well as 4th times refunding your shots, Revision pairs perfectly with Chromatic Fire. I personally really like using Chromatic Fire with Void, so I can take advantage of the weakening explosions to up my damage, and I can also run Devour to keep myself healthy. You can absolutely run this on Prismatic as well if you wanted to, which would pair fantastically with Revision, giving you Transcendence the whole way, and you can still rely on Devour. For aspects, I went with Feed the Void and Chaos Accelerant to increase the effect of my Vortex grenades and to activate Devour. For fragments, I like using Echo of Harvest to generate extra orbs off of any targets I kill weakened by Chromatic's explosions, and Echo of Starvation as an extra option to proc or maintain Devour from those orbs. Echo of Persistence will up your Devour timer, and Echo of Expulsion increases the effect of your grenades even further. For my gear set, I went with TechSec to get those disorienting blasts, particularly on barrier champ shields, so that I have more time to line up sniper headshots and secure the kill. I went with full gunner archetype armor to get my weapons and grenade stats as high as possible, with super in third. I've been running 2 super fonts so I can squeeze out some extra damage if I've got armor charges, and same with the grenade font. I've been running a Kinetic loader mod as well since I'm using the largest magazine on revision and the reload is pretty slow. There isn't much in the artifact mod to help out void builds right now, but I definitely recommend Elemental Coalescence to generate void breaches so you can synergize it with Echo of Starvation to activate Devour. I'd also recommend Elemental Overdrive if you're running a void special or heavy so you can get some extra damage when you pick up those breaches. You can also make this build a triple champion stun if you run a rocket sidearm for unstops and either a suppressor grenade or the new linear with jolting feedback for overloads. Overall, the gameplay loop is pretty simple. You just try to get as many precision kills as possible for those weakening explosions while you generate targeting data and refund rounds back into revision with 4th times. Save up a full set of data so when a barrier champ arrives, you can tag it a couple times, pop their shield, disorient them, and dust them with sniper shots. While it's not the flashiest build, it is an absolute blast and it really lets Revision 0 shine. So if you're like myself and you appreciate builds that focus on gunplay over abilities, this one's a must try. I've left a dim link for this exact build in the description if you want to try it out or use it as a base for your own spin on it. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know down below what you think of Revision 0 and Chromatic Fire, and subscribe to the channel to keep an eye out for more videos soon.